It was supposed to be a day of joy. Balloons, cake, laughter, a celebration of another year of life for a little boy who had his whole future ahead of him. But instead of birthday candles, there were police sirens. Instead of laughter, there were screams. And instead of a party, there was death. This is the horrifying story of a mother who did the unthinkable, executing her own son, just hours before his birthday. The story begins in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Texas. It was one of those places where people mowed their lawns every Saturday. Where children rode their bikes down the street, where neighbors waved to each other across white picket fences. But behind one of those tidy homes lived a woman named Andrea Yates, a mother of 5, who on the surface seemed like any other loving parent, gentle, intelligent, and devoted to her children. But Andrea was not okay. Beneath her calm exterior, she was battling something invisible and monstrous, a darkness that had been growing for years. Friends would later describe her as quiet and kind, but also deeply troubled. She was a devoted wife, a former nurse, and a deeply religious woman. But she suffered from severe postpartum depression and psychosis, a condition that can cause delusions, paranoia, and uncontrollable impulses. Her husband, Rusty Yates, thought faith and love could fix everything. He didn't believe in medication or psychiatric hospitals for long-term care. He believed Andrea would recover if she prayed hard enough. But he couldn't have been more wrong. By 2001, Andrea's mental state had deteriorated. She had attempted suicide twice, had been hospitalized multiple times, and had been prescribed antipsychotic medication. Doctors warned Rusty that his wife was a danger to herself and possibly to her children. But he continued to leave her alone with them, even when she was showing clear signs of instability. And then, one summer morning, everything collapsed. It was June 20, 2001, a day before her eldest son's birthday. The house was quiet. Rusty had left for work early, as usual. As the children were still in their pajamas, Andrea walked into the kitchen, filled the sink and the bathtub with water, and began calling her children one by one. First was Paul, age 3. She calmly led him to the bathroom, lifted him into the tub, and held him underwater until his small body stopped moving. Then came Luke, age 2, and John, age 5. She drowned each of them, one after another, with chilling precision. Afterward, she carried their lifeless bodies to the bed and laid them side by side, wrapping them in sheets. She then called for Mary, her 6-month-old baby girl, her only daughter. She drowned her too. And finally, she went to get her oldest son, Noah, who was 7 years old, the one whose birthday was just a day away. He saw the horror in her eyes, saw his siblings floating in the water, and realized what was happening. He tried to run, but Andrea caught him, dragged him into the bathroom, and drowned him too. When it was all over, Andrea called the police and said, in a calm and flat voice, "I just killed my children." The call sent shockwaves through Houston. When officers arrived, they found the bodies of the 5 children laid out neatly on the bed, as if their mother was tucking them in for a final rest. Andrea was sitting on the couch, soaking wet, emotionless. Detectives described the scene as one of the most haunting they had ever witnessed. The small toys, the birthday decorations waiting to be hung, the uneaten breakfast on the table, all frozen in time. Andrea confessed immediately. There was no attempt to hide what she'd done. She told police that she believed Satan was inside her and that killing her children was the only way to save their souls from eternal damnation. She believed she was protecting them by ending their lives. The trial that followed became one of the most controversial and heartbreaking in American history. The public was divided. Was Andrea a monster or a victim? The prosecution painted her as cold and calculating. They argued that she knew exactly what she was doing, and that she waited until her husband left for work to carry out her plan. They sought the death penalty. But the defense told a different story, one of tragedy, mental illness, and medical failure. They presented evidence of Andrea's long history of psychosis and hospitalizations. Her doctor, Dr. Philip Resnick, testified that she was in the grip of postpartum psychosis, a rare but devastating mental disorder that can cause mothers to harm their children out of delusional beliefs. In one haunting piece of testimony, Andrea said she thought her children were not developing right, and that if she killed them, God would forgive her and allow them into heaven, but if she didn't, they would be damned forever. Despite the evidence of mental illness, the first trial ended in a guilty verdict. And Andrea was sentenced to life in prison. But the story didn't end there. Years later, it was discovered that a prosecution witness, a psychiatrist who claimed Andrea had copied a scene from the TV show Law & Order, had lied under oath. The episode he described never existed. This false testimony became grounds for appeal. In 2006, Andrea Yates was retried. And this time, the jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity. She was sent to a high-security mental hospital instead of prison, where she remains to this day. The case sparked nationwide debate about mental illness, motherhood, and the justice system. Could someone so clearly disturbed truly be held responsible for her actions? Or did society, her doctors, and her husband fail her long before that terrible morning? Rusty Yates defended his wife for years, saying she was not evil, she was sick. But many struggled to forgive, arguing that no illness could excuse what she did. The media dubbed her the drowning mother, and her story became a chilling symbol of untreated postpartum psychosis. In the years since, experts have pointed out how the tragedy could have been prevented. Her doctors had warned of the dangers, yet she was repeatedly discharged and left alone with her children. The medication that had been helping her was stopped shortly before the killings. And despite clear red flags, her husband continued to believe prayer and patience were enough. The Yates case changed laws and mental health awareness across the United States. It forced courts to reconsider how they handle mothers who kill their children due to psychosis. It also helped destigmatize postpartum mental health issues, reminding the world that depression and psychosis are not just emotional struggles, but serious, life-threatening medical conditions. Today, Andrea Yates lives in a mental health facility in Kerrville, Texas. She spends her days quietly, often painting or knitting. She has expressed deep remorse, telling doctors she prays daily for her children. She refuses media interviews and has said she believes she deserves to be in the hospital forever. Rusty has since remarried and tried to rebuild his life. But the shadow of that day never left him. "There's no way to describe it," he once said. "You can't forgive it. You just learn to live around it." The story of Andrea Yates is one that challenges every instinct we have about good and evil. How could a mother, the very symbol of love and protection, become the destroyer of her own children? The answer lies not in simple hatred, but in the tragic reality of untreated mental illness. The case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about faith, medicine, and denial. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from strangers in the night, but from the silent suffering inside the people we love most. In the end, 5 innocent children lost their lives. A mother lost her mind. And a family was destroyed, not by malice, but by madness. As one investigator said later, standing outside that quiet home in Houston, "There are crimes you can solve. And there are crimes you can never understand." This was one of them. If you or someone you know is struggling with postpartum depression or psychosis, reach out for help. It's not weakness, it's survival. Because sometimes, the smallest cry for help can stop the darkest tragedy before it begins. This was the story of Andrea Yates, the mother who executed her 5 children, including her son, just one day before his birthday. A crime that remains one of the most haunting in American history.